which I was so excited to do, and it actually appears the ricotta latke was actually very important discovery because it served as a climactic moment of the competition of the book. And it was interesting because one of the big threads running through Love and Latkes was the problems facing the Jewish deli, like the ridiculous, the sort of the issues dealing with the gentilification of Jewish cuisine and dealing with kind of like the problems that are facing the Jewish deli. But in B'nai Mitzvah Mistake, which is the first of my new series, I couldn't help myself. Apparently, like I managed to decide, okay, so I talked about the troubles facing, commercial Jewish cuisine, but I also went to talk about something that was flourishing. And so one of the subthreads in that series is my take on a heritage Kiddush shop, which may or may not be inspired by the famous Yonah Schimmel's, which is a famous Kiddush shop, one of the very few remaining Jewish heritage restaurant / locations in New York City, in the Lower East Side area. And as a result of that, as part of the promotion for the book, there are random stickers and bookmarks with the question, what do hockey and knishes have in common? Because I asked my best friend, who is many things, who can actually cook, to pull together an interesting knish recipe. And so we did, and we had a grand old time doing that. And it is on bookmarks and stickers associated with the book and the series, because it's the existence of this particular knish shop and the decisions it faces are a subplot of the series. So I'm not myself.
Did you want to answer, Alana, or no?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I mean, for me,
Yeah.
it was just eating, but it wasn't just my normal eating of tacos, because normally I am a creature of habit. I will go to this place and I'll look at this menu and I'll always get the same thing because I know I love it, and I always try to get something new, and I didn't. But I was forcing myself to try tacos that I had never had, and I was watching Taco Chronicles on Netflix, so I was and some I found that I absolutely loved, but I was like trying a goat taco or an octopus. Oh, octopus is my new favorite taco, and you could not have gotten me to eat that at all. And like, so it really, and I was kind of, when you're a writer, you're just kind of this weirdo when you're eating the taco, because like normal people are eating and I'm like, with a little note thing and like smelling. My husband's like, what are you doing? But I'm like, I'm like stalking the people back there, watching them cook, because it's like this huge different thing. So like, yeah. So mine was just a journey of eating, but I did watch Taco Chronicles on Netflix, which is in Spanish, and they go to the different regions, and it really helped me kind of understand, for instance, like the goat that was like available in that certain region. And when they came over, to Middle Eastern. So, it really helped the storytelling aspect of that. So yeah, it was fascinating.
I love that. I'm going to have to go find that Taco Chronicles show.
So good. So good. 3 seasons. Amazing.
How fun is it to say I got to eat tacos as research for my book?
Yeah, what a great journey. All right. So what, I feel like the food lets you open up things a little bit differently than if you don't have food. It's like a door into other things, food is love, and Tin Kim has that in one of her books. So what's your favorite scene in the kitchen, or I don't know, while your characters are eating? Do you have a favorite? It doesn't have to be steamy, it could be like sweet also.
Okay, I have one. So in Happy Endings, Andre has a scene where he's created this dish that's based off of his family. So Andre is Black, his family's soul food, his mom's soul food recipes, and he's thinking about this dish that Trixie's mother fed him when it's a second chance for romance, when they dated the first time around. And he's created this whole recipe around it, and he invites her into his kitchen, and he's so nervous. So it's shrimp etouffee, and then in a lot of Asian cultures there's that burnt rice at the bottom of the pot that's kind of crispy and chewy and nutty, like caramelized. And then instead of using like just regular, steamed rice, he serves the shrimp etouffee over it. And he's so nervous about it because he's taking something from her culture and then taking something from his culture and putting it together. And he's terrified that she's gonna hate it and she'll be mad at him for like appropriating Vietnamese food. But it's just this like the tender, sweet moment between them where it's kind of his way of apologizing, right, for all the crap he did to her the first time around. And that's it was such a lovely scene to write. And this is a dish I made up, so it's like TJ. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should try this out and see if it actually tastes good.
Did you try it? Was it good?
I have not tried it, but I've had readers try it. And say
Okay,
something.
because I honestly, when I read Happy Endings, I was like, I want to try this 100%. Like,
Yeah, well, I have a rice cooker, so it doesn't have burnt
yeah.
edges.
Mhm.
And I think I just got like too lazy to actually like cook rice on the stove and have that burnt bottom.
Yeah, yeah. What about TJ? Do you have any favorite scenes? I know your books get pretty spicy.
Hold that thought until book 4.
You don't have to give me a spicy scene though either. It can be a sweet scene.
Well, yeah, actually, the one that comes to mind is like actually kind of very innocent. I think the scene in Chef's Kiss, my first book, where the main couple they're co-workers, so they're ordering lunch as a team, at work to eat together after kind of like a long day's shoot. And Ray offers, I think they're eating empanadas, something handheld. And they ask Simone, who up till this point in the book has been very standoffish and very prickly and also incredibly germphobic. Ray offers her a bite of the empanada that they have just taken a bite of. And Simone decides to go ahead and do that. And, even though like in her mind, she's like, it's like we're kissing, but not. Oh, and it's very, Pride and Prejudice, like, hands grazing wrists and things. It's like a very chaste moment. But in her mind, because like this is as close as they have ever gotten, it's just very charged. I think that's sexy. It's not like overt or anything, but I think it's pretty good.
I love that example too. That really represents the energy of those two characters. So I like that you picked that too. All right. Alana, do you have a favorite kitchen or eating scene?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ramon is kind of this cutthroat businessman, and he just comes over to gentrify or gentify because he's Mexican. Julieta's authentic seat at table taqueria, and he's Stanford, Harvard business, and all he's looking at is the numbers of this and that. And she's just like, dude, I'm done with you. And she makes him go into the kitchen to actually cook. And then her mother recreates the taco that she had served his father. They had briefly dated in the 70s, and has him taste it and smell it and use the 5 senses, and to me it was incredibly erotic, but it was also kind of showing that, kind of with recipes or anything, and you read this, and I think, one of the best things that Tin Kim said was about how your mom said a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I mean, that's how my recipes are. It's like, oh, well, just this much. And so a lot of times, like, you can read a recipe book or watch something on TV, but there's something about kind of having that taste and figuring it out, like, that might not be written down. So it was just kind of him exploring cooking. So definitely that scene, and that's in Ramon and Julieta. But in the next book, Kiss Me, Mi Amor, one of the things I did was, because there's kind of this perception, it's like, women, when you're in a family, that like, oh, you're supposed to cook. And I'm not a good cook. I'm a good eater, which I love to eat. But so Carolina does not cook, and her father is so ashamed, thinks no one's ever going to marry her, and tells Enrique, like, no one will ever, I need to tell you right now, you should stop dating my daughter because she can't cook. Like, no one, cut your losses now, run. And he's like, I'll cook for her. And so I thought that was really important as a play too, just to, kind of say that, that, yeah. And she's like, the same thing, I love to eat. So,
I was hoping that one of you would be a terrible cook. So thank you for confirming that at least one of you, maybe more than one of you.
I'm a very good eater, and I watch food shows as kind of stress relief. I like to watch cooks, and I like to eat everything pretty much. So, like, it's interesting because like we're talking, like, TJ was talking about characters who haven't interacted much before but are charged. Alana, yours was about a character who was basically brought back to kind of the heritage of that moment of like them, his father and her mother dating, sort of like kind of bring all over the place. Anyway, all of that reminds me of a scene in Love and Latkes where Abe invites Batya over to his place when he is doing his kosher barbecue on on that night, and he's prepping it, and he's got this pop-up, and so he asks Batya to help him. And like their closeness in the kitchen, their closeness in his kitchen, like in his setup, like prepping the orders, like taking the beef, taking all of the things from the smoker, like organizing the chicken that he had to make because of a friend of theirs who doesn't eat beef, constantly conversations about like what was going on. And it turned into this dance. And it was the closest that they had allowed themselves to be since, just since everything had started. Like this was kind of like the moment where Abe was letting Batya into his life again. So.
I love that. So I was thinking that all of your books at one point or another, some a little bit more than others, kind of touch on like small business and like entrepreneurial spirit in one way or another. Like there's some characters in most of your books. So I don't know if you could talk about if there's like small businesses or that inspired you, or that business owners or maybe that reminded you of characters in your books. Like I know Stacy, in your books, like they're always going to some bakeries, or they're and your main characters doing stuff too, but it's very small town, but like small town business, and I love that about it. And then we've got Tin Kim Lam. She's got her main characters, both her main characters in Happy Ending are have a small business that they're presiding over. TJ, yours has it's a brewery they open, right? See, it's been like a year since I read that book, but it's a brewery. And then Alana, obviously we've got the whole gentrification story there. So I guess if you could talk a little bit about just the small businesses you love and the community that you see being built around you.
Yeah, I'll start on that. I mean, so obviously I wanted to write about tacos. One of the main things I really wanted to write about was gentrification or gentrification. So like, I mean, one of the things I think is so amazing about romance is that on the surface, you get this happily ever after, and that you get, some spicy scenes, but you can talk about other issues without, Eva Longoria said, don't hit him over the head with the tortilla. So it's like, you're talking about these other issues. So what I was noticing when I first moved to San Diego 20 years ago, I used to always love Barrio Logan, and I used to go all the time. But back then there were just these small little taco shops and whatever. There were galleries. It was like very, very community, like, and then somehow it changed. Like there was like brand new breweries and like there was all these new things and they were kicking out people and the rent and there was like everything was closed and they were putting kind of stuff and it was killing me because you had this small little tiny mom and pop. And so that was one of the main things. My favorite line I think I've ever written in any book is, you know, we're not some Mexican Disneyland where you can, you know, stand there with a donkey and a churro and take a picture. Like this is an actual community. Like we serve people who are in the community and everything. And then all of a sudden it became cool. Like it became, and then I worried about me, you know, writing my book, and my book has been optioned for TV show. And so like as a TV show. So then am I contributing that? Because now they're going to be even more like, oh, like, hey, let's go to Barrio Logan. You know, she wrote about this great taco thing. So I was like, no. So, you know, I struggled with that as well. But I really wanted to kind of show the contrast between Ramon thinking this was a great business opportunity, and he's Mexican, but he's, you know, crazy rich Mexican, versus she's like in the community and she has her taco place and she could be at a Michelin star restaurant, but she wants to feed her community. So that was what was really important for me in my book.
Definitely that tension is a lot in your book too. The inner tension and the tension between them.
Yeah.
Alana, like, sorry. I was, can I answer that? Okay, sorry. No, Alana, everything that you were saying kind of ties into a lot of the conversation that happens in Love and Latkes. Like Abe and Jacob actually have literally that conversation about the ideas of what happens with gentilification and Jewish food, and sort of this idea of like how many Jewish delis are dying, kosher delis are dying, and Jewish food is newly discovered wrapped up in some random like Christian owners like, oh my God, look what I discovered. And I'm sure like we all like understand how that goes with outside cultures, you know, altering, you know, the contents of food and sort of going, oh my God, it's brand new. It's not. You know, and that plus what had been happening on the Lower East Side, the loss of the Jewish community, like the loss of the Jewish heritage of the Lower East Side, which I talk a lot more about in B'nai Mitzvah. But like, you know, I think about growing up, the Jewish bakery that I spent all my life going to as a kid in the small town that I lived in, you know, Alter's Bakery, you know, we got there, we got our challahs, we got our breads every Friday, not Friday there, and there it was, and it was gone. And, you know, it sort of ties into this idea of like, you know, how important it is to preserve this heritage somehow, how important it is to remember where things came from. So that is why that conversation was so crucial in Love and Latkes, even though it wasn't a romance, it was the beginning of a romance, but still, like they, you know, it was kind of Jacob going, listen, you have to like really think about this and about what you're doing, about the idea of opening a Jewish deli, and you know, are you ready to do it? Are you ready to like devote everything to this and then have it go up in smoke kind of thing? So
That's very relatable as a small business owner.
I'll go next.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so when I conceived the idea for Happy Endings and the characters, like I came up with the boss babes, and they're all business owners, just because I have run various businesses throughout my adult life, and probably in elementary school where I was like crocheting rings and selling them for a quarter. So I guess I have an entrepreneurial spirit. But I wanted to show women as entrepreneurs, as small business owners who are successful, right? Because that's not something we see a lot in general. And I created these women, the boss ladies, they're all doing something in a sex positive industry. So Trixie from Happy Endings, she sells sex toys. She's a sex educator. Josie in Full Exposure, she's a boudoir photographer who's extremely successful. And then the third book I'm working on with Zoe, she owns a plus size lingerie boutique where she designs a lot of the clothing. And so to me, that's really important to show that even though I'm a college educated person, I think that um, we see everybody like I'm thinking about this now because my oldest is 18. It will be a senior in high school. It's like everybody's pushing all our kids to go to college when it's not necessarily the right path for them. And I think being able to share different ways people can be successful, different ways Asian people can be successful that aren't being a doctor or a pharmacist or a lawyer or whatever it is that is expected of us is really important. And it just so happens that I'm picking all fun things that that I would love to do, like in another life. Like, who would want to be a boudoir photographer? That sounds really fun. Or like I have a background in costume design, so I'm like, I'm sure I could write up stuff about someone designing lingerie. It can't be that hard. Uh, so things that I would love to do, like in another life, if I had another, you know, more time on my hands, or could clone myself to do all these fun things.
All right. Do you want to answer this one, or are you?
I feel bad because everyone had such amazing answers, and my answer is just kind of like, oh, they open up a
I mean,
craft brewery
theirs
'cause I
are
really
a little
like-
bit. Their books are a little bit more centered on it, but I mean, I guess. Do you have a favorite brewery that you love that is inspired?
I couldn't pick just one of my kids. There are some really great breweries popping up in New York State, and even in New York City, there's one in my neighborhood called Dykeman Brewery that does a really decent lager. And I know that it's not the most exciting thing, but I think it's actually really hard to do a really good lager. So if you ever see it, I think it's being distributed more widely now. Check it out. But yeah, I think when I think about small businesses or as opposed to big businesses, I think that there's, in my second book, a lot more tension between sort of high class cuisine and low class cuisine. There's a tension between people who have learned to cook on like a very, high, like expensive level, Michelin star stuff, as opposed to people who are like home cooks or running mom and pop stores and can do like one thing really well, but it's not considered like fancy. It's not considered like, worthy of like the big bucks. I don't know. I think it's very interesting how we classify some foods as like super ritzy and other foods as like, ooh, simple and down homey. There's a lot going on there has to do with, misogyny and racism. And yeah, that's all I got to say about that, I guess.
I want to add to
Those are some
TJ.
very good points.
I want to add to what TJ said, because I'm going to go on a little rant, because pho, okay, Vietnamese noodle soup has been like a home cooked thing. It takes hours and hours to make good stock. And I get so angry, and people go, I'm like, why is this pho so expensive? It should be like only like $10 or whatever. And then now it's like non-Vietnamese chefs are co-opting pho and banh mi, like the sandwich, because it's popular. Like I keep seeing all these blogs on how to make Vietnamese inspired banh mi, and it has like nothing of the original flavors and profiles. And I know Alana was saying that earlier in her book about how like how do you like you have the quote unquote authentic, right, which I think is just gatekeeping. And versus like how does the food evolve, but then you still honor the thing. Anyway, so that's like my little rant about pho. Everybody go have pho for dinner.
I will.
Sounds
Small
really yummy,
business.
actually.
I wanted to say something also piggyback. I can't even say piggybacking. It's like on what Sue said earlier. What it was making me think is that so much of the food, and then also just as Tin Kim said about having it evolve, is that initially so much of this food came out of cultural or religious necessity. So like lox being an answer to eggs benedict, right? Or and then when it's like a lot of times you feel that when the other chefs who are not of the culture and they're like, oh we're gonna have this hamburger taco just because we're gonna be all fusion. I'm like, do you understand, like well, burritos, it was a way to keep food warm for workers to go into the fields. Like, there's kind of like a cultural history. So how to keep that and evolve, but kind of understand like the kind of the origins of the food. Yeah, so I think all of that's fascinating. I took a class on food science at Stanford, and they talked about, it was about science, so it was not as exciting, but we kind of talked about that and the cultural things about that and everything. And so I just think it's so, there's just so many facets to this conversation.
All right. So I want to know, what food would you pair with your book? And it could be more than one if you can't decide. And you can mention one book or multiple books if you have multiple that you want to talk about. Whatever works for me.
I'm feeling very angry that girl dinner has become a thing, because I feel like, not that I invented it, but I was definitely on the cutting edge is how I feel, because just little things, just a bunch of little things on a plate. It's great. Yeah, I love a cheese plate. I love a little nosh. I think any platter of like 4 or 5 little things that you could just eat like a handful of while you're reading, that's perfect.
Well, for full exposure, since it's a it's a Mardi Gras romance set in New Orleans, I would pair it with there's a cuisine called Vite Cajun, and one of the well-known dishes is crawfish, but it's so it's like boiled, like Louisiana crawfish boil style, and like spices and stuff. But then the Vietnamese people have taken it another level. They made like this butter sauce with like ginger and lemongrass and chilies, and then they like toss it all over the crawfish. So it's like a great mash of the two cultures that are discussed in full exposure.
Alana, did you wanna?
I mean, I'm gonna be so original here. But I mean, clearly mine would be a fish taco. But
Right.
instead
Yeah.
of an ice cold beer, I'm gonna give a Paloma because Julieta loves Paloma. But I'm not doing the traditional beer battered fried, which is amazing. I'm going more of just kind of like a clean fish where you can kind of taste all the salsa and everything like that.
Yum. You're making me hungry, all of you.
Come visit me. We have food. Yeah, so we should do a food tour of everyone's.
Oh my God, that sounds
books,
amazing.
And then like we all go to places. That would be awesome.
So let's see, I am going to be, well, predictable and say that I would absolutely pair latkes and all sorts of dipping sauces, though I would personally prefer the applesauce for a lot of reasons. Applesauce is in the neutral ground between exactly. Applesauce is in the neutral ground between meat and dairy, so you could have it with anything. I know there are people I know who are pro sour cream. I am not one of them for a lot of reasons, but you know, you can have what you want. I do have a character coming in book 3 in the new series that is has a sour cream addiction. So he actually shows up in Love and Latkes. I would also pair exactly. I would also pair the B'nai Mitzvah mistake with either Barekas or Knishes, you decide. They're both really, really yummy. It doesn't matter what filling, they're just fantastic. So, but I actually wanted to pop back to the earlier conversation about appropriation and conversation. If I hear one more person mention, I would like to elevate Ashkenazi cuisine again, I will throw something. But anything more annoying to me than reading a very particular British chef's attempt to make challah using butter and also suggesting it is the best thing to serve during Passover drives me absolutely banana pants for a lot of different reasons. Primarily, again, butter is not particularly used in challah because it is dairy, and one cannot mix meat and dairy, especially with challah. And also, Passover is a holiday where no bread can be served for a lot of different reasons. And it is exactly, yeah, exactly. So yes, so anyway, so yes, I absolutely get the conversation taking over pho and sort of like,
Oh no,
dealing
yeah.
with-
I feel like most people feel that way about their cultural food when anyone says to elevate it. Like That's very condescending. But I am gonna say, let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now. What are we writing right now? And as we do that, if you have questions, this is the time to add it to the chat or the Q&A, either one, and we'll try to answer a few of those at the end. Do you want to go ahead and start, since you're, or Alana, with your what you're working on?
Yeah, I am attempting to finish book 3, which was due like a month ago. If my editor's watching, it'll be in ASAP. So book 3 is about the third brother. So it's called My Fair Senor, and it's set in Northern California. And she's a tequila master, or maestras of tequila. So of course there's still food, so she's pairing it, but she's pairing more street foods with it, like elote and everything. And I am just having the time of my life. Drinking and trying to write my book while I eat street food. So if I can cut that down, maybe I'll finish the book, but that's what I'm working right now.
Well, they say to write drunk and edit sober, so you're on the
Oh my
right track.
gosh. Absolutely. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
For me, book 3 is I'm finishing up now, but it's Friends to Lovers, which is so hard for me because I want them to bang like right away. But they're not. And a Zoe, our lingerie designer, is working with her best friend from college they're working on an all Vietnamese play based off the Vietnamese Cinderella fairy tale. A musical that they're hoping that they can workshop well in DC and take to Broadway. So there's gonna be a lot of I keep saying it's gonna be like Vietnamese as fuck. So I'm like really enjoying writing it.
Sounds awesome. TJ, are you working on anything right now that we can get excited about?
I am. I'm turning it in 2 weeks if everything goes to plan. Thank you. Yes. Let's all just cross our fingers on that one though. If my editor's watching, it's definitely coming in 2 weeks.
We're all scared. We're all like hiding.
So it is actually food industry adjacent. It takes place in the world of the New York high class cocktail lounge scene. So yeah, beverage industry intrigue and romance. And so I am also drinking a lot.
We should drink and sprint together, all of us.
Let's do it. Let's do it now.
TJ, Margaret, have you seen that? Have you seen that upscale cocktail competition
On Netflix?
Yes, it's so good, so good.
Yes, if you haven't watched it,
I haven't.
it's
What am I doing? What is it called?
it's called.
I
What's
can't
it
remember.
called?
I can't remember what it's called, but there's a
I'll find it.
Drink Masters.
good.
It's Drink Masters.
Drink
Oh,
Masters.
thank you.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's I think we're on the cusp of something here. Like most people 10 or 15 years ago wouldn't have ever tried to make their own, like, ravioli or their own bread or their own anything at home.
Mhm.
And now I think people are getting to the point where they're like, oh, I could make a cocktail myself at home and not spend $25 a cocktail when I go out. At least in New York, that's how cocktail prices are going. So yeah, that's where all that came from.
All right. So Stacy, what are we working on right now?
Book 2 in the Last Girl Standing series is already turned in. It comes out, it's prepping to come out in March of 2024. I am working currently also on a book 3. It is tentatively titled The Dreidel Disaster.
Oh, I love that.
It is the story of a Hanukkah celebration in a small town gone wrong. The small town mayor who's annoyed about it, and the fixer who's sent in to help save it. So it is the third book in the third book in the Last Girl Standing series, and the main male character actually is a character who was a secondary character in Love and Latkes, and so this book officially makes Last Girl Standing a spin-off of Friendships and Festivals, which is my first.
Nice.
So
All right. I'm just trying to scroll and see if there's any new questions popping up. Somebody said $25 is lowballing it for a cocktail in New York. So somebody had asked earlier what you eat. Somebody had asked earlier, and some of you answered it in the Q&A. If you end up eating the things while you're writing, like, does it make you hungry for the things you're writing about?
Oh, I always say that I'm eating trash food when I write. It's like chips, beef jerky, chocolate. I don't actually like go cook, or I'll make like a what do you call it, a girl dinner?
Girl dinner. Sorry,
I don't
I'm on
actually do
TikTok
any
a lot.
cooking until later, so
The worst example of this for me happened. I ages ago wrote a short story for an anthology called Burning Bright. And I had my main male character go out to dinner with someone, and he ate mofongo, which at the time I wrote the story, I was eating semi-regularly. Because I was visiting friends who lived in an area that had amazing mofongo. And then I craved it for a year. After that story was done, I craved it for a year because I couldn't get it until, like, I could not access the location. Drove me absolutely nuts. I ate so many plantains. I cannot even tell you how many of them I ate. And finally, friends of mine and I went to this restaurant, and I was like, I knew exactly what I was getting. And friends of mine looked to me like, what are you doing? And I was like, I want mofongo. Waited for stuff. It was all exciting. And so was I. My friends were like, what? I had never been so happy to eat mofongo my entire life. So
it makes me think of pregnancy cravings when you're like, because your book is kind of like a baby, right? You're just craving this food while you're writing it.
That's exactly how I feel. Like, I don't eat good. Like, if I'm doing research, like, as I said, I would go get that taco and write with a notebook. But if I'm actually writing, I'm like in a fugue state where I'm just like, it's complete trash. It's Oreos and chips. And like, I'm yelling at my husband to bring me a Starbucks. And it's like, I don't have time to eat because like, I'm just, yeah. And then, I always think once the book's over, I'm going to eat, again, because you're just you kind of eat while you write. I don't know. It helps me. But it's nothing like, yeah, it's just trashy. Not the food's trash, but it's like fasty type food. Not fast food. I don't eat fast food because I don't like it, but it's like chips and that kind of stuff.
Girl dinner.
Girl dinner. I want a book called Girl Dinner. Someone needs that's the best.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like there should be like a sapphic romance called Girl Dinner.
I totally agree. I think that would be incredible.
Double entendre.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, nice. Here we go. That sounds incredible.
TJ, are you just having girl dinner and cocktails while you're writing?
Oh no, it's just caffeine for me. It's straight caffeine. I can't do anything. I can't eat or drink real things while I'm working. Because then I get distracted, because then I'm like, ooh, I'm just gonna go make myself a little snack. And then before you know it, it's like I have like my little lunch with like a little side salad, my sandwich, my soup, and my drink. Like, I can't do that. So while I'm working, it's just tea with like a lot of milk and sugar to substitute for a meal, because that's almost a meal.
I mean, that's like breakfast a lot of days. Coffee is breakfast, right?
Everyone thinks that writing our authors are so glamorous. We're not. We're like this, like bloodshot eyes, hunchback over our computers.
That's
my thing about romance authors that I think is so fascinating is that, we do these events and like, our publicists want us to be very like social and to do all this stuff. And some people are, but most of it, I mean, we spend a lot of time alone, like just kind of, as you said, like hunched over, like my husband, like, when's the last time we shower? I'm like, hey, I'm drafting a book right now. Like, because it's kind of this thing that you kind of have to, when you write, you're just kind of go into it. And then you kind of have to emerge and be a normal human, which is never fun. So.
Okay. Samantha in the chat had asked, what made you want to write romance? So I feel like that's a very heartfelt question to maybe end on today.
I started writing it because I've been a romance reader for a very long time, since I was in middle school, and I gave up on it as an adult because I didn't see myself in the books. They were all, very white. And when I came back to it, I said, you know what? I think I could write a romance, which is not as easy as I imagined. we'll just pretend that my first attempt is just sitting in a file of forever, never to be seen. But I'm glad I stuck with it because I get a lot of readers who say, "Hey, I've never seen this particular pairing, an Asian person and a Black person in a romance," or just like feeling their Vietnamese culture represented on the page, and it feels really good. And I'm gonna keep writing them.
Yeah, I love that. I am like on TikTok a lot, and that's always a complaint is that it's like if there is like one BIPOC character, the other character is white in romance. Like it happens a lot. So it is really refreshing to see you writing romance. That is not that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my answer is similar. I never read romance. Well, not similar to that part, but on that, I'd never read romance, mainly because I'd never seen myself in romance. And so it was very hard for me to relate. And, so I was an English major at Stanford and I read all these books and I really related to like the books, like I read Arthurian romance and I read like literature of passing and all the stuff. And then I read a book called Dirty Girls Social Club by Elisa Valdez Rodriguez. And I had never seen like Latina, and that was chick lit, it wasn't romance, but to see Latinas having romances with other, like it was like, blew my mind because I'd never seen that. And that was why I hadn't read romance. And so then I wrote a book and initially, and so this is my 32nd book. I wrote 30 books indie and 2 books trad. And at the time, agents were saying, you can have the girl be Latina, but the guy has to be white or we're not going to sell it. And I was like, that's not what I want to write. Like, that's not what so I wrote all these books indie. And then I finally felt it was my time. And so, my agent, I had this patient agent and she was like, I was like, okay, I actually think someone will buy a book with 2 Mexican leads and I'm going to do that. And so I finally, submitted the book and whatever, but it was representation. And if I hadn't read Elisa Valdez's book, I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be writing this romance because I'd never seen Mexican American. I'd never seen a Mexican character. And it was just like, I think the best moments I've had as an author have been speaking at panels and book signings and have Mexican American women and girls even who I'm like, who come up and are like, I read your book and I've never seen myself and it changed my, and then I start crying, we start crying and then it's like this thing and I'm like, and that it's just so important for me. And the other thing I really wanted to say quick about was TikTok, is I think what people don't realize about TikTok is TikTok feeds what you want to feed. So like if someone's only looking at white romance, they're only seeing white romance and they're not seeing like people like that. And they don't see the algorithms. And when publishers put all this stuff, all your sales aren't as good. It's like, well, when the feed is just, the same people getting the same books over and over again, you will not see the rest of the books. My TikTok has all BIPOC, but that's what I read. So like, I don't even see a lot. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that book came out. But anyway, people have to understand the algorithm. But yeah. So
I totally agree with that. I tell people that all the time when they're like new to TikTok. I'm like, you got to go like find a couple hashtags that are like what you want to see. Go like them. The algorithm will learn quickly. But if you don't, you do kind of get very like homogenized stuff, and it's not the best.
not good.
Yeah. See. Let's go, Stacy. Why did you
Actually,
why did you want to start writing romance?
I mean, I'm going to probably echo everybody else who's been saying, but, insert, though I definitely love the fact that Elisa Valdez Rodriguez's book existed because it was an amazing book, but also there was one of the very few Jewish leading characters. It was a Jewish Latina. It was incredible. I loved that so much. But for me, I think like the big sort of door opening book for me, like I didn't read romance until I was in university. My mom was my mom's a huge romance reader. And so the door by door, as we say, she passed it down to me. But the separation between reading romance and writing it, I think the door broke open for me when I read Deirdre Martin's Chasing Stanley, but also A Candle for Nick, which is a category romance, Hanukkah romance. The first time I'd ever seen that, I lost my ever loving mind. But also, seeing like, because the thing is, like, a lot of romance, generally speaking, like, is Christian, whether it's like overtly Christian or culturally Christian, it's Christian. You look at the celebrations in the book, and so generally speaking, when I was reading romance until those points, it was okay, that's fine. I can enjoy the story, enjoy the characters, but it's not me. I don't identify with any of this. Like, you know, they go to church on Sunday morning. Oh my gosh, you know, they're, you know, and until I read Deirdre Martin's book, me, who is a multi-generational hockey fan, didn't feel comfortable writing a hockey romance because I couldn't see, you know, like it's for them to write, not me. And then all of a sudden there was this Jewish heroine in the middle of this book who had family and relatives that I recognized. And I was like, wait a second, you mean I can do this? She can put in a Jewish character in a book, and so can I. And but the thing is also, like, I'd always been writing it. I just didn't understand what I was doing until that point. And so you know, that's what got me to the first, I wrote 3 short stories with some amazing people about a hockey team called the Empires. And then that was what started it all for me. And I don't think without that book, I don't think I would have actually sort of agreed to write the romances with Isabel Kelly and Cassandra Carr and Heather Lear and Laurie Hunsaker. Like, I never would have done that. And that is all of that is what led to Miracles and Menorahs, which was my first solo single title. So, but yeah, like I think it's important. And like, it's interesting to think about, like, you know, when I started, I could probably, and even when I was reviewing and book selling, like I could, you know, count the number of Jewish authors, like not Jewish authors writing romance, but Jewish authors feeling comfortable enough to write Jewish characters. In books has gone up significantly for a lot of different reasons, and it's beautiful. And there are these new communities that are finding, you know, that are of people that are finding each other. In Discord, there is the Romance Schmooze Discord, and on Facebook there is Jewish women talking about romance, and it's beautiful and it's new, and it's something that I never would have thought could happen 10 years ago, because I thought that romance was for everybody else, but not. So
Yeah, I mean, we even have Hallmark movies with Jewish holidays now. So
yeah, like
I watch them all because I'm an addict, but that's okay. All right.
I mean, I have to say, like, as a side note, like, I never thought that I would be able to say, if you didn't understand what I was talking about the Lower East Side in B'nai Mitzvah Mistake, go back and watch Hanukkah on Rye. Like that.
I loved Hanukkah on Rye. It was
Watch
so
that
good.
one. I watched that one.
He said
I
that he
cried.
never heard of Fiddler, and then I was out. I was like, "How you are a Broadway star?" And he said he'd never heard of Fiddler on the Roof, and then that took me out of the thing. I was like, I can't, because I'm in love with him. Like, he's just the best. He was on Seymour and Broadway. Sorry, total rad thing, but I was just like, "What do you mean?"
Fiddler on the Roof. It's iconic.
Yeah,
Iconic.
it's wild.
Yeah.
So I can't. Anyway, so with that one line though, I was like, I'm done. I can still watch it. But, come on.
Okay, I'm gonna let TJ tell us a little bit about your inspiration for writing romance and why you got into it.
Yeah, I think we're sensing a theme here amongst the group.
What? No way.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, I was really into romance books when I first discovered them as a much too young, precocious kid digging through an auntie's bookshelf on vacation. But yeah, then you get older and you're like, oh, actually, it's not meant for me, very literally not meant for me. And then I think, yeah, I stopped reading it because of that. And I then just sort of found, you know, what interested me more in like fan fiction and places where like queer people were writing stories for other queer people. And I've always been interested in romances. I've always been like writing romances in my head all the time. Like, I'm the kind of kid who was, you know, would be watching a movie and be like, well, I think those two should kiss. Like, you know, your friend is like, well, they're 2 cartoon dogs. So I don't think we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, I've always just been interested more in like the relationships between people than in all the, you know, explosions and adventure stuff that's happening on the screen. I'm more interested in the interpersonal stuff. So I was always going to do it. I just happened to be really lucky to have lived to a time where, you know, slowly and surely we're getting more and more queer stories written and published in mainstream places. So yeah, I just want to keep writing books that hopefully like people haven't seen before, like kinds of queer love stories that haven't been shown yet, maybe things that aren't like mainstream palatable, is for lack of a better word, like,
Yeah.
because I think they will be soon. It's just like, you know, it's gonna happen super slowly. So yeah.
For sure.
I just wanted to piggy back on one thing TJ said too, though, but and I think that's just so important that, you know, if you don't see yourself in books, you're never even going to want to be a writer, right? So, you know, to do that, but also someone said in the comment, it says Samantha, wait, I think, sorry, you know, it's just that so many kind of books in the past of either, you know, what are considered ethnic books or religious books, or, you know, books about sexual identity, they're kind of like trauma porn, like they want our kind of trauma stories, you know what I mean? And so to me, what's so important about romance, and again, I didn't grow up reading romances, that our characters who are different religions, sexualities, races, like whatever, have love and joy. And so that is kind of, you know, that I want, like, I don't want to continue to, I had one comment, I think the most devastating comment, I can handle bad reviews. I've written 30 books. If you don't like my book, I'm the first one to be like, oh yeah, that's probably right. The character development wasn't there or whatever. But when they said something, oh, I really loved her book, but I didn't understand why she didn't talk about deportation. And I'm like, because my book is not about deportation. Like, that's awesome if you want to read about deportation, but that's not my book. My book is a romance. And so just kind of that expectation that we can all have love and in whatever form that looks like for us. Anyway, so like, to me, that's why I think romance is the most important genre and the best.
Everyone deserved to have joy and a happy ending.
Joy! It's my
Yeah.
middle name, literally. Joy is my middle name.
Love that. Hello, dog. Hello, puppy.
This is Snickers. He's very happy to be here.
Oh, so cute. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I had so much fun talking to all of you and reading all of your books, because I love romance. I mean, I love all books, but I love romance a lot too. So, and thank you, Billy, for setting this up and for just making Bookstore Romance Day even a thing. All these books are for sale on my bookstore website, but also get them from your local indie bookstore. Yeah, and just thanks so much for being here, everyone, and for sticking with it.
Thank you so much.